Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2022 Oregon Active Transportation Summit. My name is Lindsay Huber, she, her, and I'm the Education Director at the Street Trust. Welcome to We Need More Walking School Buses in Oregon. What's stopping us? You can type your questions in the chat or use the raise hand tool, both found at the bottom of your screen. Please use the social media hashtag OATS22 to post about the summit on social media. And don't forget to visit our website at thestreettrust.org to learn more about other programs and activities. Now, without further delay, please welcome to your screen, Noelle Mickelberry.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Noelle Mickelberry, and I'm the School and Community Travel Options Coordinator at Metro Regional Government, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm going to facilitate this discussion today, which we are really hoping is really more of a roundtable where everyone participates. We have some awesome panelists who will kind of help introduce some ideas based on their experience leading and implementing walking school buses around the state. And the goal today really is to focus in on how we can get more walking school buses implemented and how it can become a regular fixture in student commutes, and what are those limitations and how can we change them. So I'm going to do a really quick introduction slide deck, and then the rest of the time will be as a full group here. Let me share my screen here. Okay. I'm trying to. All right. Are folks able to see that? Sorry, my Zoom is looking a little.
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. So again, the title, we need more walking school buses in Oregon. What's stopping us? And I will learn how to move the PowerPoint forward. There we go. So we're not going to spend a ton of time today kind of talking about what a walking school bus is. We're assuming that most folks that are in the room have experience with walking school buses or bike trains or corner greeters, which are kind of the three models that we'll be talking about, which are, a walking group, a biking group, and adults along key routes to support kids going to school. I have a couple links that I'll put in the chat that give some more background on what kind of implementing a walking school bus program and kind of what they are, so that folks can learn more if they're not familiar. But again, the goal today really is about how do we get more of them. We know they're good. We know what they are, and we want to see more to support students getting to school. I also want to give a little bit of context about student transportation, which, because as we start talking about what the challenges are in implementation, we start getting into how kids get to and from school and how that works in Oregon. This is a little map of one school in Centennial School District here in the Metro region. It shows the school's enrollment zone. The yellow area is the school's walk zone, which is within a mile of the school.
And Noelle, we're not seeing that slide yet.
All right. Let me try again.
There we go.
Oh, you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't do anything.
Oh.
No, I can't see it. I am so confused.
I wonder, are you showing the presentation or showing the page that's got all the slides and everything? It's like where you can edit it.
I thought I was showing the presentation. Sorry about this. Let me just re-share my slides so I can be on the same page as everyone else. Okay, are we back to the beginning slide?
Yes, this looks better.
Okay, let me get us over. Student transportation universe. Okay, awesome. Thanks for bearing with me. So This is a picture again of the enrollment area of a school in Centennial that shows the walk zone, which is within 1 mile of the school, and that's where students are expected to be able to get to school by walking or rolling. And then a big portion of that enrollment district is also enrollment area is the bus zone, and that's where the school provides bus service for kids getting to and from school who live further than 1 mile. And then there's this red area that's actually part of the walk zone, but the school has determined has a hazard for some reason. It can be a health or safety hazard that the school district has identified. And that means that they're providing bus service within 1 mile for those specific students. And that has to be approved by the state school board in order for the school to receive reimbursement for that busing. So this is a lot of words, but basically I just wanted to break down kind of what pupil transportation, which is what the school districts provide, are versus Safe Routes to School, which does walking school buses. Pupil transportation serves that bus zone and is operated by school districts. And this is what makes up our school bus system, includes contracted services to provide transportation and occasionally direct payments to caregivers to get their kids to school. The transportation grant of the state school fund reimburses schools for 70 to 90% of those costs. And programs that serve students within that walk zone are not eligible for funding from the state school fund transportation grant unless they're in that designated hazard zone. And then a quick primer on Safe Routes to School. That's really, we're serving the walk zone. So it's primarily serving students within that 1 mile. And it's funded entirely differently and typically by government grants that are often time limited from 1 to 3 years or from local funding sources. And there's some examples of ODOT Safe Routes to School program, the program at Metro, or dedicated city or county funds. And these programs are operated by a variety of entities, school districts, nonprofits, cities, counties, parks departments. It's a wide range of folks who are providing Safe Route services. And we actually have folks from all of these different entities here today. So we'll kind of hear a lot of perspectives on implementation of walking school buses as those are serving students within the walk zone. So that's just a quick primer on the school transportation universe that I wanted to get us some context for before we dive into our conversation. And this is kind of the way our discussion is going to go today. And again, I really want to hear from folks in the room. You all have a lot of collective knowledge that I think will help us get to more solutions by the end of the session. I'm going to do a quick poll. Then we're going to talk about what's working well for folks. Then we're going to move into what are the challenges. And then we're going to spend hopefully the bulk of the time brainstorming solutions with some ways to get involved at the end. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and launch our poll, which is just one question. Are you currently involved in an active walking school bus program or route? And this can include bike trains, corner greeters, any kind of model where adults are supporting kids in getting to school by walking or rolling. Oh, it looks like everybody answered. So yeah, we have about 75% of folks here today are not currently operating a walking school bus program, and about 22%, 23% are. So that'll help us in our conversation as we start talking about, what are those challenges and how can we resolve them. So thank you for that. I'm going to kick us off then with our first discussion, and I'll kick it to our panelists to answer first, and I'll ask if they introduce themselves when they start talking and share who they are and what where they're from. And I'll ask that of any of our participants from the room who join us as well to just introduce yourself so we all know who's sharing. So yeah, let's start with what's working. The first question is for those of our panelists who have an active walking school bus program or route, to tell us a little bit more about what has worked for them to institute and sustain the program. And maybe I'll pick on Leah first.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Leah Beata Lewis. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Safe Routes to School coordinator for the Beaverton School District. And I wanted to share with you, well, first of all, we operate around 7 walking school buses currently. That can vary year to year. We are still using more of a volunteer led model. And we instituted a new walking school bus launch model that we found pretty successful this year. So I thought I'd just share that briefly. In that when we have a new school who's interested in launching a walking school bus, we hold kind of an initial one-time event where we invite parents to come with their child and participate the first time. We have sign-up sheets right there at the event. And we found that it kind of dispels maybe some of the concerns or worries that parents might have about putting their kid on a walking school bus, because they get to experience firsthand kind of A, the joy that kids have walking together. And then B, they can see how much safer it feels when you're walking in a large group. They can see the exact route that's proposed. And then having the sign-up sheet right there with contact information is a great way to kind of get the new walking school bus going. And then the last little tiny tidbit that I would just put in there, our most successful walking school bus has teachers who volunteer to lead it, and they've been doing that for 13 years. And that bus operates weekly and sees about 40 students. I think both the longevity of it, kids knowing and relying on it from year to year, and also the popularity of just getting to see your teachers in a different light has made that really successful. Next.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. Whitney, do you want to share?
Yes. My name is Whitney Bennett. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Safe Routes to School coordinator in Central Oregon. I work for a nonprofit, called Commute Options. So we have run 2 different models, and I'll talk about trying to figure out what order to go in. I'll talk about the current as it relates more to what Leah has going on, and then our past and future plan. But currently, we have the volunteer model that is operating. We have 1 walking school bus route that's been going all school year, and it relies 100% on volunteers. And in the past, it's been parent-led volunteers. This year, what we ended up having is 1 lead champion volunteer that was not a parent and kind of carries the walking school bus has carried it throughout the year. The other way we staffed or got our volunteers was just through the relationships we have in the community and connecting with the Boys and Girls Club, who presented on the walking school bus, and we presented heavily and made a connection with First Interstate Bank, and they provided us with 10 volunteers to lead the walking school bus. And in a time when kind of collecting volunteers has been challenging, it was kind of a blessing to receive that many volunteers in one connection. So that's helped elevate our current walking school bus and that volunteer model. And it's been great, but our most successful walking school buses have really been we call the paid leader model. And that's where we actually are able to pay our leaders as if they're a very part-time staff at our organization. And they tend to work 10 to 20 hours, and they'll run that walking school bus 5 days a week. So in the past, we had about 6 of those going at one time, and it was a great success. There wasn't funding for us to implement that model this year, but we plan on implementing that model next year, where it's more of a well-received time. People are kind of not as reserved to jump on board into being out in the community. So there's more interest. So we'll be back in that model come next school year. Next.
Thanks, Whitney. Sam or Megan, do you want to share about bike bus, bike train? Any successes you want to share?
Megan, why don't you go?
Okay.
hopefully you guys can't hear my cat purring. She's so loud. Hi, my name is Megan Ramey, and I'm the founder of Bike About, which is a site promoting two-wheeled tourism in North America's best biking cities, towns, and trails. I am also on the board of our local transit agency, CAT, and I'm the representative, the active transportation representative for ODOT Region 1 Act. So I am a bike, train, and walking bus conductor by volunteer and by passion. I started kind of poking the principal at school about what we could do to get more kids walking and biking, got really involved with the redesign of the new school, and he just knew me as very passionate about kids walking and biking to school. So when COVID happened and they wanted to see the kids again, he reached out to me to organize essentially a bike parade. So the teachers could see the kids. And we had 150 kids roll by the school, and teachers were crying, and it was amazing. I have since received a $20,000 ODOT pedestrian safety grant, both to pay for my time and to do fun programming and start a safety rodeo. I would say the top 5 things that are working is number 1. I want to give a shout out to Sam and for inspiring me and inspiring many individuals around the nation. Like, groups like this are what's working to actually make actionable change. So many people talk about climate change policy, and these people are actually doing it. And we're learning from each other, and it's wonderful. Second thing is fostering and it takes a village vibe within your school, so parents get to know each other and feel ownership of these programs. I wish I could pay them next year. I really hope to, but we have an amazing group of volunteer conductors that lead the bike train and the walking bus without a hitch. Like, I don't have to remind them, they just do it. And a perfect example is one of the parents forgot it was their turn or their duty one morning, and one of the kids ran up to another parent's house that they knew led the train, grabbed her, and she took them all to school at the last minute. So they know which doors to knock on for help. Third thing is there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. We operate every day of the year. There were only a few days we couldn't run the bike train because it was so snowy out one week. My husband led the bike train to school. I think it was 2 weeks ago we got all that snow, and the city hadn't shoveled the sidewalk yet. And he took a side route down like a dirt path instead of taking the sidewalk, and the kids were just so excited and just happy. So it's just continuing to run it. We had 2 girls that biked every day this winter. It was awesome. And then partnering with a local free bikes for kids program. So I'm lucky because I help run the Anson's Bike Buddies program through our school, or through our community. So we get free bike donations, and my husband is the mechanic. So just this past Friday, we got a kid named Fabi on a bike, and he was on the bike train today. And so that just goes to show you the direct link between kids not having bikes and being able to join the bike train. And the last thing is just the visibility of the bike train and fostering that joy, and kids recruiting their fellow classmates and parents, seeing what is happening in a very visible way. I have so many people coming up to me and saying it brightens their day. So that's where I'll stop mine. Go for it, Sam.
All right, thanks, Megan. Sam Balta, I'm a physical education teacher in Portland Public Schools, and I'm a self-proclaimed student active transportation advocate and influencer. I would say lots of things are working. I mean, when we talk about our students as a phys ed teacher, we're trying to figure out how to get them 60 minutes of physical activity a day. And I'd say that the walking school bus or the bike bus are the Swiss Army knife of school problems. And if you Google walking school bus and then you click on news, it will show you all the news articles from around the country that cover the walking school bus. And it's like, oh, in this city, it's addressing student retention. In this city, it's addressing obesity. In this city, it's addressing community. In this city, it's supporting crime prevention. I mean, it's whatever the issue is that your school and your community is dealing with, the walking school bus is part of that, or the bike bus is part of the solution. And as a teacher who is, I don't know if I say lucky, but I've been placed in a position where I have bus duty, greeting kids or getting them on the buses at the end of the day, or having to chauffeur kids to parents' cars. I see the chaos of how students arrive and how they leave the school day, and then leading walking school buses and bike buses. It's just night and day. I mean, if you want to create the world that you want your kids to live in, it involves the bike bus and the walking school bus. There's just no question about it. I want to put just 2 little articles and a viral video that's going on right now with over 100,000 views of the bike bus we had this Friday for Earth Day. And we'll talk about how to make it more sustainable and more equitable to bring it to more schools and communities around the country. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Before we move on to talking about challenges, I want to open up to anyone who currently leads the walking school bus program a route from the participants. If you want to share any of your successes or what's worked well for you in implementing a walking school bus program, or bike bus. I'm sorry, I'm using walking school bus as shorthand for any walking and rolling program. All right, well, you can definitely share thoughts in the chat too. Please don't be shy. If you have an operating program, we really would love to hear more about what's working. But we do want to move on to talking more about what are some of the challenges that we face in implementing programs. Like we kick things off with, there aren't enough walking school buses in Oregon. So what are some of those barriers, and what are the challenges in implementation? And I think I'll start us off with a couple of our panelists, and I'll go to Julie first.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay, good. My name is Julie Van Horn. I'm with the Medford School District, and I use she, her pronouns. I am the Safe Routes to School coordinator. I just started this year, so that would be probably my number one obstacle, was just being a new program in the district and a new coordinator. So it was a double whammy. Not only am I learning my role, but the district is kind of learning what I can do for them. And with that, coming into it this year, we have had major obstacles with COVID related restrictions on our volunteer use. It changed weekly, sometimes daily. And so to set up a program that relies on volunteers was extremely difficult. So it kind of became a back burner for me this year. I'm excited that next year, hopefully, we start out a little different. And I'm really excited that just recently the district approved for me to go ahead and form a small walking school bus using funds. So I'll be reaching out to some successful stories here to see how they addressed policies, how you might have gotten information on how to deal with just not necessarily policies, but insurance and liabilities, and keeping it similar to a school bus route where there are certain rules and regulations that go with it. So that's it's a lot for me to learn, and I'm looking forward to it, because if I can get one small successful route, I'll be excited. My my experience this year was I did a one-time event and I did a small tiny route, and my route was not even a full route. What it was it was from a park behind a school, and we ended up having a line of volunteers. So the students would walk and we would have our people just standing there. Because if we kept going back and forth, it just took too much time. We had probably 250 students use that back route on that one day event. That is not something we can do with 1 or 2 leaders. I think that, yeah, I think I covered most of my biggest obstacles. Just relying on volunteers is hard, and then getting the funding. So with that, I'll pass it to the next person.
Thanks so much, Julie. I think I'll hand it off to Danielle next.
Hi, I'm Danielle Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the walking programs manager at Oregon Walks. And I would first echo Julie in that I'm new to this position, started in January. So that's been a big part of just me being new, it being a new program, and interacting with a lot of new staff, which includes new principals and new teachers, like wanting this to happen, but also being insanely preoccupied having their roles with COVID in schools. So that's been difficult. And then especially I've talked to some parents, it's because there hasn't been buses and people have needed to figure systems out for themselves. People have done that to an extent. So it's trying to see how to integrate a program, not wanting to step on people's toes if they're getting their kids to school safely, and trying to understand basically how to best come from an outside organization where being told that it's like if the school is what really needs to have buy-in, it needs to be through the district, etc. So that's been difficult. And then one thing that I've just really noticed in trying to do surveys is kind of this juxtaposition between this not in my neighborhood outlook and this not in that neighborhood outlook, because people will, especially in a place like Park Rose where walking school buses are and there's a higher vulnerability index, there's a lot of houseless camps on some of these roads, and people, especially parents, there's this discourse, anti-houseless discourse that gets thrown in here, like my kids can't walk there. And so trying to figure out how we can talk about that as an entire community and not have this stance like these neighborhoods can't, or these streets can't be walked for that days. And there's some things like lack of sidewalks, that's like dealing with that too. But yeah, trying to look at this from a community so that everyone has stake in kids getting to school safely, everyone has stake in people being safe in general. I think is something I'm really interested in making sure works. Yeah.
Thanks, Danielle. I want to open it up to the group to hear more. I know a lot of folks said that they don't currently operate a walking school bus, so I'd love to hear if folks have tried, what has been a barrier, anything else you want to add, or add to what other panelists have shared already. Yeah, Julie, do you want to add something?
Well, I just wrote it in the notes, but one thing I wanted to mention was this year, all of Oregon had a busing shortage. We had less staff coming back to be bus drivers, and that's one of the reasons why we need to do this walking school bus push. But I am curious how it's going to turn out for next year when I do open it up to getting one of the rules I'm sure that the district is going to have, and if I do use grant money, is they have to be an official school district employee. So they have to go through the whole application process. It can't just be me supplementing them, cash. It's an actual payroll. So we don't even have any applicants applying for the current shortage of positions in the district as it is right now. I think that's going to be a battle next year.
Julie, is it something that you could pay for an existing staff? I mean, it's kind of, because it's such a funny shift. I think that's always a challenge of like a couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the afternoon. Could that be added?
Yes, and they actually did talk about that. I will say that our current part-time staff are maxed out to their maximum part-time status before they get pushed into insurance world. And I think that that might be a deciding factor on whether they can pick up extra hours. And even if the school district, and this is just me, I haven't talked to them about this, just to let you know. I know in general, this is the way it works, is they, when you're part-time, you reach the point where you become an insurance paid employee, then it becomes different. So from my experience going into schools, I know that a lot of our part-time staff are already picking up extra hours. And I don't know where we'll be able to stretch it out any further than that. And then the sustainability factor, I am currently under a grant right now that is not going to last forever. So we would have to hopefully get some success with this grant funding to make it feasible for the district to see as a good option to use their money.
I think something really important when we sort of talk about these challenges, I always I have this very strong experience where I was walking to school and I'd walk past this student who was like a sixth grader walking all alone. And I always think about her when I do this work, that nobody's paying attention to her. Like, no, there's no bus that serves her. She doesn't have a parent that can drive her to school. She doesn't have a parent that can walk her. She doesn't have people in her community that can walk with her. She's on her own. And I think, when people might say, oh, you have to walk past a homeless camp or something like that, there's students that have to do that every day. And I think sort of centering and thinking about the most vulnerable students, if we can make it safe for them, it's going to be safe for everybody else. And that's like how we bring more community together. And that's, I think, how we overcome a lot of these barriers. We're not going to have funds. We don't have budget to provide every student a school bus or a person to drive them. But we can create walking school buses or bike buses, much cheaper, much more nimbly than we could any other form of student transportation.
I wanted to answer a couple of these questions that are in the chat from Mike and Jesse about starting a school bus. As somebody, a parent who started mine, this is one of the barriers, is having a principal that buys into it and is willing to be your partner. I was really lucky and had an amazing principal that I built a relationship with, but he reached out to me and then I started working from there. And I create maps for a living. So creating the map of the routes was just my first way to start figuring out how to make this an equitable and service a lot of kids. So I took 2 different neighborhoods that I knew had major infrastructure barriers, which again is another barrier that I was going to talk about, and how we're overcoming that, where these kids need to be able to have somebody shuttle them across bad intersections. So the map was my first part. And then the school PTO was amazing about sharing the walking school bus and the bike train starting. So between the principal and the PTO, they are your biggest they're the most effective ways to start the program. But then having a really solid map and a timetable and sticking to that timetable, you'll get maybe 1 or 2 kids that show up the first day, and then it'll build from there. So just stick with it. And you'll recruit your volunteers through the parents that want to bike with their kids, and then you'll just start dividing and conquering. Like, I'll take Wednesday morning if you take Wednesday PM. Like, so it doesn't have to be you or one person leading it to and from school every day. At most, I lead it 3 times a week, and then the other parents pick up from there. And I hope that helps answer the question. Instagram, if you look at May Street Walk and Roll, that's my Instagram, and I have images of the map and all of our communications. If you want to check that out, I can actually put that in the chat.
Yeah, I think Megan hits on an incredibly important piece, is consistency. You know, if you're proposing and sharing an idea that is fun and engaging and active and community oriented versus nothing, people are going to want to be a part of something. And I think not everybody is super outgoing and super engaging, and you don't have to be. You know, there's other people that can do that. If you can partner with your PE teacher, I say that I am the Trojan horse in all of this at the school. Like, I see all my students, I can hype up all the events. It's kind of not fair. Don't like think that you can get on the first time huge turnouts like I can, just because of where I'm positioned in the community. But I mean, it just takes putting something out, putting good out into the world, and people respond to it. I've constantly seen that, like, when you put something out and you put yourself out there and you're consistent, people show up continuously. And I think you're, you know, again, trying to create the world that you want to live in. And all it takes is you and one other person to get it going. So stick with it.
Thanks. That's super helpful. I wanted to maybe ask Leah to share a little bit, especially from a district perspective, of sort of some of the policy considerations and challenges that you faced.
Sure. And you know, Julie touched on it a little bit, and she sounds like she has a leg up on me in terms of policy. That's, you know, my biggest barrier in our district is that our risk department does not allow district sponsored walking school buses. So I'm allowed to coordinate, you know, advise, but I'm not actually technically allowed to lead those walking school buses as a district employee. And you know, I mentioned earlier that our most successful bus does have 2 teachers. You know, there's a little gray area there where they're using their volunteer time, and the bus is organized by the PTO. So our school buses are organized by PTOs. Having a volunteer sponsored program is really challenging. We have turnover, not only every year, but I mean, right now, mid-year, one of our successful buses, the leader just broke her foot. She's out the rest of the year, and we're scrambling to find somebody to replace her. And then, you know, you have parents aging out of the elementary schools, you know, again, having to kind of start over and scramble to find new leaders. So yeah, having that, the policy of the district not wanting to take on that liability piece is definitely a big barrier for us. And then I also just wanted to touch on Sam's point about consistency. You know, the school bus that I mentioned that's been so successful with 40 students now, the whole first year, it was a 2nd grade teacher, a parent, and 2 children. They were the parents' children's. And the 4 of them walked to school together for a whole year, just the 4 of them every week. And now, you know, it's 40 kids. So I always tell new walking school bus leaders, I have one right now, she averages 4 students, to just stick with it. And that, you know, it'll grow. Definitely, as people see how engaging and fun it can be, and that they can rely on it. I think that's a big piece.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Leah. And Zachary, have your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to add one of the strategies. Some of the questions in the chat was around strategies, and was to think about your allies a little bit more broadly. And so it doesn't have to be people just on the walking corridor. You can talk to parents who actually are driving their kids in and say, hey, if you drop your kid off 7 blocks from school, they can join the walking school bus. And a lot of parents are thrilled to do that because they get to avoid then the crush of cars right around the school. And you're doing that a favor, you're doing the kids who are walking and biking a favor, you're doing the bus drivers a favor because you're having fewer cars there. So there's some allies. Your principal might be really thrilled to find out that you're having kids dropped off 7, 8, 9, 10 blocks away, because now those kids get some fresh air, they get some exercise. And then he also has, or she also has, a fewer cars trying to get their kid right to the front door. So again, like thinking of a broad set of who your allies can be. It's not just those ones right on the corridor.
Awesome, thank you. That's a great point. And I think that leads us, I wanna make sure we have time to talk about solutions, because I feel like obviously there's a lot of, there are so many benefits to this. And some of the challenges you all brought up, that include kind of sustainability of needing volunteers, and liability related to who can lead a walking school bus, to kind of getting buy-in, because it seems like the real successes are where there is a lot of buy-in from the school, whether that be the principal or a teacher or the PTO. But if there isn't that, how can we get these programs to serve those students as well? So I want to talk about solutions of like what do we want to see walking school bus programs look like in Oregon in 5 to 10 years? And I'll open it up to our panelists to kind of share any ideas or strategies, and then I have an opportunity that I want to share with the group too about how to get involved in making walking school buses sustainable. But opening it up to the group first.
Something really exciting that happened recently is I helped advise Mayor Michelle Wu of Boston on her student transportation policy. And in December, I had a meeting with her superintendent. She asked me, is like, so how do you start a walking school bus at all schools in the city? And I'm like, it's never been done before, and then they bring up all these questions about, well, what about this? And what about this? And, hopefully Mayor Wu is, a fan of walking school buses enough that she will help support all those what if questions or the why questions, and help the district push through them. Who pays this? Where does the money come from? What does this job look like? There's some big questions that need to be answered. And I think it is, we're throwing darts at all these different targets and just hoping to hit. But once somebody hits and we get a bullseye, like the floodgates are going to be open. Walking school buses are going to be, or bike buses is just going to become a legitimate form of student transportation once we figure out the policy questions around it, and how do we get some money to actually pay, because that's the biggest problem. It's not sustainable or equitable to rely on parents or people in the community to volunteer.
So I'll jump in with, I envision programs like this having a really strong influence on getting demonstration projects done to address the infrastructure barriers around the school, because it highlights it in such a glaring light, the deficiencies that exist, and because it is a huge barrier in parents' minds. I was just talking to a Latina mom Saturday. Was just talking about her little boy Fabian that got one of the bikes, and she was like, I just can't wrap my head around letting him go out the door on his bike when he has to ride down that narrow sidewalk and potentially will fall into traffic that's going 35 miles an hour. And I was talking to her about this, and it's just like, it's really hard for me to say, just trust us. We will get him there like safely, when I know that this infrastructure is so scary to some moms. So I really hope that there is a super strong correlation between walking, biking, trains, and buses, and getting actual change and demonstration projects in the ground fast. And then second is these special days like Earth Day that Sam rallied around, where we have like this international bike bus for Earth Day competition. It's so wonderful because it breaks routine of parents. So yeah, more special day programming. It's like hard to just add another thing to your plate, but it really does break parents of that routine. And like, I'm wearing my conductor hat because I just came from dropping a little girl off at her house that rode the bike train for the first time on Friday. And I had to take her home on Friday after school in my bike trailer because her front tire had a flat. And I heard her say to her mom, I want to ride the bike train on Monday. And so now it's like her second day, and that Earth Day event broke that parent's sort of routine. And it's so important for like long-term behavior change. And then just having that also that partnership with like a school safety rodeo where the kids are learning how to ride bikes, and at school in their PE class. I just did this at May Street Elementary, and it was so unbelievable to witness these kids learning how to ride bikes because they've never ridden bikes outside their driveway. And so that's a whole nother thing that parents are worried about, is the skills of their children. So that's my vision.
Awesome, thanks. Any other big ideas about how to overcome some of these challenges? What you want to see happen? Well, I'll take an opportunity to share two opportunities. Take an opportunity, yeah. Anyways, I'll share two opportunities about kind of some next steps and some things that are coming up. As we've talked about today, there's a bus driver shortage across the state that every school and district is feeling, and along with the COVID pandemic and just schools really being at capacity, there is some momentum at district leadership to change the way that school transportation is funded so that districts can be more flexible and meet students where they're at. And to me, that really means implementing programs like walking school bus and bike train that are seen as part of that student transportation universe that is part of the funding that comes to schools for transportation. So just last week, two superintendents wrote a letter to the state school board asking for that flexibility. This isn't a given that that'll change, but this is the first time that we've seen this kind of request and this kind of momentum to address this disparity in how students get to school. So I want to offer up to the group, if folks are interested in kind of being engaged in that conversation. There's two more state school board meetings before the end of the year that we're hoping this issue gets brought up at again. If you want to be involved and potentially participate in some of those discussions, we would really welcome that, and I would ask for your email in the chat if you want to get more information. And we also might have an opportunity to put together a video to share with the state school board about why we need this flexibility and how we need to address these barriers to implementing more walking and biking programs for kids. So again, if you want to be a part of that, we really welcome that. And the second opportunity, I think I want to pass to Sam to talk a little bit about how we want to continue this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Noelle. So I think it's really important when we're taking on the juggernaut that is student transportation, It's important that we are, feel like we're a part of a community and we don't feel like we're isolated individually in these challenges. So something I want us to start doing, if y'all want to join, is having quarterly Zoom meetings like this where we're having higher level discussion besides just walking school buses are awesome, how do we start it? But really trying to figure out the policy, and to support each other through these questions. And I'm a phys ed teacher, so it's such an inside outside pushing of this rock up the mountain, and we all have different skill sets and we need to rely on each other for help, and just not feel like we're alone trying to take on our school district or the mayor or whatever our challenge is. So if you would like and be interested in that, please put your email in the chat, and then just sort of be a group, an Oregon group, because I strongly believe once the yes, sambalto@gmail.com. You can also put in the chat or email me. But I really strongly believe once one state, one city figures this out, it's game over. There's nothing better than the walking school bus or the bike train. I mean, we all know that. So we just got to make it happen. For children all across the country are relying on us. So we're going to continue to have these sort of meetings quarterly, so we can, make it happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. And yeah, you can feel free to send your email privately to me or Sam too, if you don't want to share it in the whole chat, but we would love to continue this conversation. And we still have a few minutes, so I just want to open up for any other questions folks have for any of our panelists, or anything you want to share about your experience with walking school buses, or what we've been talking about today.
I just want to say that tomorrow I'm also presenting at 10:30 a.m., I believe, on cultural shifts from e-bikes and bike train. It's all about how e-bikes and bike train are just like how Sam says, they're just the Trojan horses of advocacy. They change culture really fast. So you're going to hear more about the nitty gritty of how I started the bike train and see lots of really cute photos and videos tomorrow if you want to tune in.
I would jump in the answer to Julie's question earlier about funding positions with district employees, that I agree with the shortage right now. I'm hoping that's more short-lived, but our district has a crossing guard program, and I see that position as being very similar to how a district funded walking school bus person would be, because their shift is very small. It's at the beginning and the end of a day. And so those are, for our district, they are tacked on to positions. They're usually like nutrition service workers or our, teacher assistants in the classrooms. And it does often tip them over the scale, as you were talking about, making them a benefited position. So while it costs the district a little bit more, they're also very coveted positions, which I think is a fantastic draw, whether it's a crossing guard or a walking school bus leader. In my vision for the future, I would love to see a walking school bus at every school, funded by the district, reimbursed through student pupil funds, and staffed by employees who are already working, so you can depend on them being there and the consistency of being there from year to year.
Thanks for that, Leah. Anybody else have anything to share? Thanks. I'm excited to see so many emails in the chat too to follow up. I feel like we kind of are at a time where I feel like tides are shifting a little bit, and we should be really taking advantage of the moment to really rethink how we support students getting to school. COVID threw a wrench in everything, and I think as we are kind of rebuilding after that, flexibility and opportunities to connect with community are so important. And so I feel like the walking school bus and bike train model is something we want to see embraced across the state. So I'm super excited to work with it on anyone who's interested. So thanks so much, everyone, for participating. If there aren't any more comments, I'm happy to close us up a little bit early and hand it off to Lindsay to wrap it up.